As someone who's traveled across 6 continents around the world for wine, sometimes a great wine bar is all you need. So in this video, I'm going to reveal 12 of my favorite wine bars from around the world. Some are swanky and luxurious, others may have dated decor, but more than make up for it with a selection of some of the best wines in the entire world, including many aged examples, and others are under-the-radar gems, but all are well worth visiting. Ideally, this would be a useful resource for wine lovers around the world, so if there's any wine bars that you enjoy that I didn't discuss in this video, please let us know in the comments below. If the Great Gatsby opened a bar, it would undoubtedly look exactly like Singapore-based Atlas. This place is absolutely breathtaking, with towering ceilings, golden art decor, and a massive gin tower that commands everyone's attention. Atlas is a mainstay on the world's best 50 bars, thanks in large part due to the world's largest gin collection. But they also have one of the most extensive champagne collections in the world. In fact, they have a wine list that has more than 250 different champagne labels. So what I did is sit down, immediately order a gin martini, and then enjoy that while I was perusing the extensive champagne list. I then ordered a bottle of champagne to enjoy with some food later in the evening. While I was at Atlas, they were also gracious enough to give me a tour of their wine cellar. There they have some incredible trophy wines that included 1947 Dom Pérignon, 1971 Salon, and 3 bottles of 1907 Heidsieck that were salvaged from a shipwreck at the bottom of the sea. I remember just being extremely happy while I was enjoying my champagne at Atlas Bar and thinking to myself that it would be well worth the grueling ordeal to fly back to Singapore just to have another night there. But you'll definitely need to plan well ahead, as you'll need a reservation to visit Atlas. You certainly can't just walk in and expect to be accommodated here. So definitely plan ahead and make a reservation as soon as you know that you're headed to Singapore. Whenever I'm in Los Angeles, I always try to include at least one night at Wallys Wine and Spirits. While they have many locations, my favorite is definitely the location in Beverly Hills. This is a place where they have a bit of a mixed business model. It's a high-end shop where they have fine wines, rare spirits, and gourmet foods, but they also have a restaurant on site, and you're able to order one of their carefully curated wines and pay a small corkage fee and enjoy it right on site with your meal. While they have a broad selection of wine on the shelves that are ready to enjoy immediately, they also have a very special wine vault that has some of the most amazing wines in the entire world. I was there a few weeks ago, and they had an impressive vertical of Haut-Brion. They also had some extremely high-end Napa Valley cult wines, and even DRC, and an excellent collection of high-end Burgundy as well. So you can go as big as you want here. I was pleased to see that they had a vertical of Belair Menage, and I ordered a bottle of that and enjoyed a bottle of champagne while I waited for the Belair Menage to open up. The food at Wallys is quite good as well, and I appreciate the fact that the sommelier team is knowledgeable and attentive without at all being condescending or stuffy. While historically Wallys did not take reservations, that changed a couple years ago, and so I definitely recommend making a reservation before you head that direction, as they can get extremely busy. It can also be a bit of a scene, so brace yourself, especially if you're there later in the evening. Wallys is open until 2 a.m. or so. If you're thinking about a cocktail after your evening of wine, I'd definitely head over to Bar 1200, which is located in the Sunset Marquis Hotel. I discovered Bar 1200 when I was staying at the Sunset Marquis Hotel one time on a business trip. I went to Bar 1200 for a cocktail and was extremely impressed with their no-nonsense approach. They have extremely precise, well-made cocktails that are extremely strong. My first time there, I was enjoying my martini, and I looked up, and I saw Billy Bob Thornton. So I figure if it's good enough for Billy Bob Thornton, it's good enough for me as well. As much as I enjoy Los Angeles, I travel to New York City probably more than anywhere else in the world. In fact, next week will be my 60th trip to New York City. Invariably, when I'm in New York City, I'll at least spend some time in Midtown Manhattan, either because an event or conference is hosted there, or because one of my contacts has their office in Midtown. Fortunately, the Aldo Sohm Wine Bar is a great option, and it's located right in the heart of Midtown Manhattan, just steps away from Les Bernardins. Aldo Sohm is widely regarded as one of the best sommeliers in the world, and he's created an incredible wine bar that features more than 40 wines by the glass and more than 200 selections by the bottle. These selections are particularly deep in Burgundy, and I also appreciate the fact that there's always some good options from Rhone Valley. I found that this is an absolutely perfect place to meet your contacts before heading off to dinner. Founded back in 2015 by wine lovers for wine lovers, 67 Pall Mall is located in the heart of London in historic St. James. 67 Pall Mall opened because they wanted everyone to be able to enjoy fine wines and some of the best wines in the world by paying just a small cash markup rather than having to pay multiples of the cost of the bottle. This one's a little bit different though, as it's not your typical wine bar that's open to the public. Rather, it's a private wine club, so you'll either need to join and become a member to get in, or alternatively, if you know someone who's a member, you can definitely accompany them as a guest as well. But however you can get in, it's well worth doing so, as they have an amazing collection of some of the best wines in the entire world. They have more than 1,000 offerings by the glass, and more than 5,000 bottles that are available. In addition to the original London location, they have a club that's operating in Singapore, and they're working to open new locations in places like Bordeaux, Bern, Melbourne, and more. If you're not in London frequently enough to become a member at 67 Pall Mall, or to have friends who are members there, chances are you're a tourist passing through who will end up at Harrods at some point. When in London, I oftentimes find myself at Harrods with either some fashionista friends or friends who enjoy shopping far more than I do. In fact, there's few things that wear me out more than battling crowds in busy retail stores. So once I'm in Harrods, I report directly to the floor that has the fine wine, and after browsing the wine selection, I'll go straight to the Baccarat Bar. The Baccarat Bar is aptly named as everything is absolutely dripping in Baccarat crystal, from the light fixtures to the glassware. They have an extensive selection of wine here, everything from some of the best champagne in the world to first growth Bordeaux. They also have Louis XIII cognac in formats so large they actually need a cart to push it around. While you certainly can spend a fortune here, you don't have to. I've found a couple of excellent private labeled champagnes, including a rosé champagne that I enjoyed, that are actually quite reasonably priced. It can also be an interesting spot for people watching. So whether you're looking for a break for shopping, or you want to celebrate a special occasion, or have a nightcap at the end of the night, the Baccarat Bar in London is an excellent choice. Next up is a wine bar with a vibe as far away from the Baccarat Bar as you can possibly imagine. In fact, the ambiance is more like a surfer shop than a wine bar. This place is located in Little Italy, just steps away from the San Diego Bay, and close to a number of outstanding restaurants. I was in San Diego for a conference recently, and I made some of my business contacts meet me at Vino Carta. Vino Carta was the perfect venue for our meeting because my contacts were wine enthusiasts, and it was my turn to buy. Vino Carta is a great choice because it's a wine shop, but you can enjoy your wines on site for a very small corkage fee. So I was able to get some interesting and enjoyable wines that everyone really appreciated without incurring the wrath of those reviewing my expense reports. When I was there, I was fortunate that I found a champagne that I really enjoy that's difficult to source in Dallas. I also found that the staff was extraordinarily knowledgeable. I asked one worker for a California Chardonnay recommendation and told him that I wanted something that was matured in neutral oak where there was no malolactic fermentation, and they made an excellent suggestion. Since I live in Dallas, Texas, I'm frequently asked for wine bar recommendations for people who are visiting the Dallas area. Unfortunately, Dallas isn't really a prime area for wine bars. This is partly due to the fact that wine clubs similar to 67 Pall Mall dominate the wine scene in Dallas. In fact, there's 3 similar wine clubs that are more like country clubs for wine drinkers, and I'm a member at one of them, so I don't typically go to wine bars when I'm in Dallas. I will say, however, that Pappas Brothers Steakhouse absolutely has by far the best wine program in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So when you're in Dallas, my recommendation is that you go to Pappas Brothers Steakhouse and that you go to the bar where you should have access to their complete wine list. Pappas has an extraordinary selection of fine wines from all over the world. You can find everything from DRC to aged Spanish wine to high-end Napa Valley wines. They also have an extensive selection of Bordeaux, including a number of bottles in large formats that are perfect for groups. Better still, the sommelier team is absolutely elite, and they make some outstanding recommendations if you don't want to peruse the extremely long wine list. Their service is also very much on point. I would be remiss if I did not mention that this Pappas Steak recommendation applies to Houston as well as Dallas. The Houston Pappas Steak location also has an excellent wine program, and in fact, the Michelin Guide just recognized their sommelier as the best sommelier in Texas for 2024, which was the first year that the Michelin Guide reviewed Texas restaurants. When you're in Paris, it's oftentimes fun to go to the Ritz Paris for a little bit of glamour, particularly during the holiday season when everything is decorated for the holidays. Once I'm there, there's typically two different establishments that I'll try to visit: Bar Hemingway and Bar Vendôme. Bar Hemingway is named after Ernest Hemingway, who was a huge fan of the Ritz Paris and who oftentimes enjoyed drinks there with F. Scott Fitzgerald. You'll find leather seats, wood paneling, and lots of interesting Ernest Hemingway memorabilia all over the walls. This is not a place to get rowdy or enjoy selfies. In fact, they discourage video taking. But they do have one of the best cocktail programs in the world. In fact, this is where they invented the serendipity. But they also have an interesting wine list, and you can get some enjoyable champagne or wine here as well. But I'll typically start the night out at Bar Hemingway, have a cocktail, and then move over to Bar Vendôme. I should warn you, though, that they don't take reservations at Bar Hemingway, and it is very, very difficult to get in. So I typically recommend getting there either very early or later in the evening. After I'm done at Bar Hemingway, I'll typically make the long walk through Ritz Paris to Bar Vendôme. Bar Vendôme is an attractive option for those who enjoy live pianists and also for those who enjoy an exceptionally deep wine list. You can either get wine or drinks at the bar, or you can sit down and have a proper meal as well. The wine list is extremely impressive and spans dozens and dozens of pages. They have some impressive vertical collections from some of the very best producers in France. They also have excellent options from all major wine regions in the world. So no matter what kind of wine you and your party enjoy, you should be able to find it here. Their menu is also appealing, and they have a number of classic options, but my personal favorite is the lobster roll. So I'll typically get some sort of a white burgundy and enjoy it with these lobster rolls. If you're a serious wine enthusiast, I highly recommend making the pilgrimage to Bern's Steakhouse in Tampa, Florida, at least once. Bern's has an incredible wine collection with more than 500,000 bottles in their amazing cellar, which spans two different buildings. While their markups are unfortunately higher than they used to be, they still have an amazing selection of old, aged, historic bottles. So this is a fantastic place to go for those who are looking for birthier wines. I understand that Bern's is a restaurant and not strictly a wine bar. However, as with Pappas Steak in Dallas and Houston, they do have a bar, and I recommend going to the bar and getting there early so you can get some seating. Once you're at the bar, you can get access to their full array and inventory of wine. You also don't need to deal with their reservation process, which can be a bit of a problem these days, particularly if you don't plan ahead months in advance. Bern's has an extremely deep collection of bottles, particularly with age on them, so you can find some extraordinarily old Bordeaux, Burgundy, and California wines, among others. Bern's keeps their cellar extremely cold, 45 degrees or so Fahrenheit, and so the wines in their collection tend to mature a little bit more slowly than wines housed other places. As a result, the wines there typically have a little bit more life on them than wines from other sources. If you're interested in wine recommendations, wine collecting strategies, and learning more about wine, please do subscribe to my channel. I've been collecting wine for more than 15 years and also have a level 4 diploma from the WSET. So I have both formal certification as well as substantial practical knowledge from the School of Hard Knocks. Since the WSET Level 4 Diploma course was not offered in Texas when I took the program, I ended up signing up for a course that was offered in Boston. As such, I had to fly to Boston to take my exams. Typically, after finishing an exam, I would head out to Troquet on South, where I would dine at the wine bar and raid their extensive selection of older vintages. Troquet on South has an amazing selection of wines, including lots of Bordeaux with decades of age on it. They're also particularly deep in Northern Rhone. So one evening I enjoyed a bottle of Gigal Côte Rôtie with decades of age on it. They even have some Lewin Artist Series Chardonnay and also an extensive collection of aged German Riesling that I found enjoyable. The prices here are also surprisingly affordable, so even when I'm in Boston on business trips, I will typically meet contacts there and again find lots of interesting wines that won't break the budget in terms of getting my expenses approved. When I'm in Seattle, Washington, there's typically two different places that I'll consider to enjoy some wine. The first of which is the Purple Cafe and Wine Bar. This is a modern multi-level space that's anchored by a dramatic spiral staircase and a floor-to-ceiling wine cellar. The wine list here is heavily focused on Washington wines, as you might expect, but they also have an excellent selection of wines from places like France, Italy, and other parts of the United States. The food here is legit as well. It's upscale comfort food with enough elegance to pair with some serious wine. Just steps away from the Purple Cafe and Wine Bar, you'll find my other go-to selection for wine when I'm in Seattle, namely Wild Ginger. This is both a restaurant and a bar, but I'll typically just go straight to the bar without making a reservation and then order from their extensive wine list. Here you'll find an extensive collection of white wines and particularly some Riesling. They have lots of aged Riesling from some of my favorite areas such as Germany, Alsace, and the Vaha region of Austria. If you're heading out to Willamette Valley wine country or otherwise spending time in Portland, Oregon, I highly recommend visiting Oregon Wines on Broadway. This is a wine bar that I discovered on my first trip to Oregon. When I walked in, I was pleased to find a carefully curated selection of Pinot Noir by the glass. They even have a number of different flights so you can try small tasting portions of numerous different Pinot Noir from Willamette Valley. This is a perfect way for you to orient yourself before you head out to wine country. It helped me discover some of the producers that I liked the most, and also which of the areas I was most interested in visiting in Willamette Valley, and some of the winemaking techniques and styles that I preferred. Speaking of Oregon, if you're going to be planning your own trip to Willamette Valley, be sure to check out this video that's linked above, where I provide 10 travel tips for visiting Willamette Valley.